So, welcome to another Thomas Perry LLC webinar. Today's topic is using ritual to build connection in a virtual world. A little bit about me first. I'm an agile transformation consultant and coach here in the Seattle area, author of the Little Book of Impediments, and founder of the Agile Management Northwest Conference, as well as a Sherpa, builder, innovator, sailor, and a variety of other things. The agenda for today is pretty simple. We're going to talk about what rituals are, the benefits of rituals, and then we're going to go through a set of rituals that we can use, and we're orienting these rituals towards the kinds of rituals you would use to help bring together virtual groups. So there are many rituals out there, of course, and within our Agile community, I think we have quite a few that we've come up with on our own, but this isn't going to be necessarily just rituals oriented towards agility. These are more generic. And we'll talk at the end here about how you might go about creating your own rituals, and then we'll wrap things up. So what are rituals? I've got one definition here: actions that a person or group does repeatedly following a similar pattern or script in which they've imbued symbolism or meaning of some sort. And this is taken from a book called Rituals for Work: 50 Ways to Create Engagement, Shared Purpose, and a Culture that Can Adapt to Change. I want to start off by saying that a lot of the material here that I'm going to share with you is from this book, and I really can't recommend it highly enough. If there was one book that I really enjoyed getting most recently, it's this Rituals for Work book. I think these folks are really on to something here, and I like what they're doing. Another book along a similar theme is Daily Rituals: How Artists Work. And this is a book by Mason Curry. And this is much more oriented towards individuals. So Rituals for Work is oriented towards group rituals. And the Mason Curry book, Daily Rituals, is a book that's oriented towards personal rituals. And the Mason Curry book is a lot of fun because it's basically a catalog of famous people in literature, academia, just basically, politics. And it looks into the rituals that these very impressive people had in their own, their own daily routine. And so his is more of a catalog of specific rituals for specific people, where Rituals for Work is oriented around group work. So I'd recommend both of those books. Now, rituals have a lot of benefits, as it turns out. And here's a list of some of them. I think there may be even more, but um, they actually are useful for improving performance on a number of axes here. So they decrease anxiety. They help people deal with negative transitions. They motivate and bond people together. They increase creativity. They improve the quality of their experience, and uh, they improve perceived effectiveness and feelings of control. Those are all pretty good things. Those are all good things to have. And as somebody was pointing out to me the other day, uh, the number one thing in complex systems that is going to provide the most dramatic improvement is actually anything that enhances the interactions of things within that system or elements within that system. And so looking at teams as complex systems, then we should be looking for the interactions, and rituals surrounding those interactions would be one of our biggest opportunities for real improvement.
Question.
Yeah.
Would you make a distinction between a kata and a ritual, or is a kata a Japanese word for
Yeah.
a certain type of ritual?
That's a good question. The thing that a ritual has that makes it, and I'm not quite sure if I'm going to make this distinction or not, but a ritual has meaning and value associated with it. So it is. Um, I think it's that meaning that I'm going to latch onto here and ask: do we think a kata has lots of meaning implicit in it? It can, I think, but I'm not. When I think of it in terms of the Japanese practice, like in martial arts, I'm not sure that when I use kata, I'm using it to derive meaning. I
See.
think that when I'm using kata, I'm using it as a way of enhancing practice, and
Hmm.
there's definitely an overlap between practice and ritual.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
uh, but I think ritual is going to be leaning much. When I think of ritual, I go towards things that have rich, deep meaning associated with them, and that crosses into more of the religious ritual and that sort of thing, which are more than simply going through the steps, but going through the steps to derive a kind of meaning from it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Hey, Tom, one
y-
thing another item there for your list, I think that might be valuable is that rituals enhance safety.
yes, yes,
Because what happens,
absolutely.
yeah, we all then understand what we're about to do
Yeah.
and so forth. So there's almost like an agreement and we're in a safe zone. It's not about,
Yes.
we're not just doing random things.
Right, right. So ritual, when we talk in the Agile community about creating safety, I think ritual is an important element to support that. So spot on. Thank you, Art. So these rituals that we're going to go through here are taken from the Rituals at Work book. So these are not my own. And I have the references to the pages where this information was taken from. So I want to be clear, these are rituals from that Rituals at Work book. The first one is called the Remote Holiday Party. And the idea here is trying to build shared culture across a geography. So if you've got a group that's a multinational group that is in different countries, for example, then this might be an ideal way of bringing those folks together. And the way it works is pretty simple. You need to appoint a facilitator, and then there needs to be some sort of uh, way of bringing the folks together, whether it's video conference, voice conference. The richer the better. And you want to incorporate as much richness into it as you can. So using things like a shared music list that is that is contributed to by the groups in each region, and then basically holding a gift exchange. So the way the gift exchange works is maybe you have a set amount of money that's going to be set aside for each gift, some limit, and when it's your turn to get a gift, you turn off your audio, and everyone else on the conference gets to decide on your gift and then make the purchase.
I
And then
love
you
that.
turn, yeah, and then you turn your audio back on, and then the next person turns off their audio, and everyone else gets to decide on what that gift is going to be.
Are you familiar with the Troika Consulting liberating structure?
Can you refresh my memory?
Basically, two or three people are your consultants, and one person has a problem they'd like advice on. The person
Yeah.
has like 2 minutes to explain the problem they're going through,
Mm-hmm.
and then they turn around, and
Mm-hmm.
the consultants stand there and talk amongst each other and
Yes.
refer to their notes and go, well, it sounds like he's having this problem. This could be the reason, and maybe this remedy would help them.
Uh-huh.
And then you're done, and then the person turns back around, and so there's an intentional, like, no, you don't get to participate in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you have to spend more time listening, where in this case you're not necessarily listening for the same reason, but
Mhm.
the idea that everybody gets to discuss what to get you, and you can hear but not. Oh, you turn off your audio, not just your ability to speak. You can't even hear it.
Well, and to be clear, I think that's the intent, but I think there's also room here to play
That'd be
with
funny.
this, right?
Yeah.
So I think you're onto something there, Joel, in
Okay.
that, being able to listen to what people are saying in the selection process for getting you a gift, it's not a bad thing.
That could reveal so much about,
Yeah.
like my grandmother was blind, but somebody at one point caught onto the idea that she liked cows, and so from the next 30 years worth of holidays, she got cow butter dishes and cow sweaters, and she never had the gumption to tell people, you know what, I actually don't even like cows. but if she heard that they were talking, well, we just know she loves cows
Oh,
so much, so of course it's got to be cow oriented.
oh my God.
Then she might be able to say, actually,
Yes.
after she got her last cow gift,
Uh-huh. That's
final
cool.
cow gift, she could update everybody on how that's actually not what she loves.
Oh, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
wouldn't it be great also if we had this kind of a situation with stakeholders where we could
Oh,
have them
yeah,
hearing us talk
Yeah.
about what they think that they actually want?
hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Art.
Yes. Yes. Great, great ideas, guys. Thank you. So the next one's called the global mixtape. And the idea here is when you're trying to build bonds across these distributed teams. And what you would do is each week, a different team is in charge of creating a music playlist. And on, say, a fixed time, say Monday morning, uh, you release that mixtape to the other teams. And so it can be anything you want, and it's a chance to kind of share your team's expression, whatever you've put together, with other teams.
Tom, have you found any situations where this can wind up hurting somebody? Like where somebody might, I don't know, almost prejudging or something what somebody might want, and somebody might not feel strong enough to actually say, no, this isn't what I like.
I think there's the possibility of misusing it, and you'd want to be careful, to with what you share. So if it's Snoop Dogg, that might not be appropriate. um, and I'm just pulling something out of the air or something with a lot of expletives on it, and you have some folks in another group that are sensitive to that, then I can see how it could be misused or abused. Also, I think my experience with music and teams has been mixed. I think music is really cool. I love it. I'm a musical person or musically inclined person. So I love having music myself. But I have been with many teams that actually did not like music and did not like any extraneous noise, and were actually quite adamant that they wanted nothing to do with it. And so I'm sure, a wide number of reasons for that. I won't even speculate on what those were, but I've actually found a fair amount of resistance in some workplaces to the idea of playing music, and so I think you have to be careful where you might try and use that.
When I worked at Microsoft doing video game testing, there was a manager that thought that the best solution to this sort of a problem was that he would choose the music, and um, he would delight us to his favorite, you
Oh,
know, 80s hair metal or something
oh,
in the 2000s, and
yeah, yeah.
um, it
Hey,
it
Joel, don't
was
be putting
not.
out the best music ever.
Hey, I was into Twisted Sister at one point,
Yeah, right.
but
We all went through that phase.
anyway, I just thought it was funny that nobody had the guts to go, hey, um, you realize that you're really missing it here.
Yeah,
Nobody is into your music except you, pretty much.
yeah, yeah,
So dangerous. But I think if you had a team that did actually all say like love jazz,
yeah.
that seems like it would elevate the team's cohesion to be able to say, hey, everybody, it's jazz time, and everybody look forward to it.
I firmly believe that. Yeah. If
I
I
hate
do
jazz.
think that if you can use music, that it is the kind of thing that can create that additional glue for a group.
Yeah.
But your mileage may vary. Use cautiously, and don't uh, 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 impose it on others. So check-in rounds. So here the idea is, and this is very informal, when you want team members to relate to each other and make empathic connections. Um, and the idea here is to consciously weave into meetings, uh, right into the conversations that you're having, personal updates. How's the family, hobbies, weekend activities, etc. And again, I've seen some teams that do this very, very naturally. And Monday morning, there's an update on what folks did over the weekend. And I think in some very healthy teams that I've been a part of, there's a great deal of integration of how's your wife doing, how's your kid recovering from that cold, or that sort of thing, and really can be also a way to open people up, create safety, like you were talking about, Art, where by talking about things that I am comfortable with and are meaningful to me, it then makes the other conversations easier to approach. And perhaps it's a way of bringing out those quiet people in your group who otherwise you don't hear from.
Tom, when I see the word check-in rounds, like you've probably heard of like the check-in protocols, like glad,
Yeah.
sad, mad.
Yeah.
Um, d- Sometimes those feel really forced to me.
Yes.
Do you feel like there's a way to have a protocol that's less forced? We're thinking ritual. So it's
Yeah.
like, how do you make sure you find the right happy spot there?
I think I think there are a couple of things that may go into that. One is how formalized it is. Certainly with the core protocols and the check-ins and the core protocols, the formalization, it feels overly formal to me, or some of those feel overly formal to me. And so finding ways to make it more casual and still present, I think, is important. And that is a matter also, and I think that's the kind of thing that maybe is best supported by people who are attending to these things. So people who are very socially skilled are probably going to be better at raising the casual question, hey, what'd you do over the weekend? Or how's the family? Or that sort of thing, as opposed to people who perhaps are less socially skilled may find that more of a struggle to do in a casual way. So, and I don't know if I'm fairly confident actually there's not a hard and fast answer to this. Um, and it may be that you start off, and you'll see as we get to the end here that we talk about triggers. And so there might be things for some events, for some check-ins, there might be explicit triggers. In the core protocols, they use explicit triggers, which is basically somebody raises their hand in the group and says, I'm checking in. And that's a formal announcement to the group that we're going to do something very special and unique. And we're going to go through some very explicit steps. Whereas with a ritual, I would want people to feel like it's going to happen. It's going to happen every time I meet with this group. We're going to talk about things unrelated to work. We're going to talk about the family or the weekend or whatever. And that's one of the things that I value and appreciate about this group. So I want it to be something has meaning again, that is useful, but I don't want it to be someone raising their hand going, okay, now everyone will share what they did over the weekend. That sounds very artificial to me and would actually probably obscure the meaning. And I would feel personally less likely to put forward my own personal interactions in a case like that.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Do you, or to anybody, does anybody have any examples that they could share of core protocols in action where where it looks, natural and not so forced? Because every time I've read through them, and I bought the little booklet and everything to try to, support those guys and stuff, the it feels like it was designed for people on the autism spectrum to be able to be minimally functional with one another.
Yeah, yeah,
And or a bunch of really happy social people would probably like no problem, but it feels like it was built to have all, it's like software interfaces where I will you will fill out this interface with an integer and a string, and
yeah.
and I will respond to you with a true or false.
Right.
And it's like so mechanical that I've
Yes.
never felt comfortable to bring the whole set of things into play in a work environment. But I use the hell out of that decider protocol.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joel, it's kind of almost like when you think about letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. And it feels like sometimes what we wind up doing is we start going after the letter of the law. Oh, we have to answer these questions instead of the spirit of the law. Maybe it's a matter of we need to figure out how can we modify that so we actually get to the spirit they're trying to accomplish.
Well, I agree. If you read the Liberating Structures book, you get the feeling that it's about the spirit, not the letter. But when you read core protocols, it feels pretty
Stilted.
black and white.
Yeah.
What they have a real clear setup and execution on how to do it.
And I think that's a little bit of a reflection of the authors as well, the McCarthys. I think that's probably a reflection of them. I've never worked on a team that was exclusively dedicated to using the core protocols explicitly. I have known folks who have, and I've gotten varying feedback. Some people found it oppressive. Other people thought they were very effective. I will share that I have worked with teams that used check-ins informally, very high performing teams, and it didn't start off informally. It was very much premeditated. So on those teams, the ones that I'm thinking of one in particular, the scrum master and the dev lead were the kinds of people who stayed up late after hours conspiring with each other about how they could help the team. And they would worry through, well, how can we bring more of our presence to the team? And they would think about things they could explicitly do, like check-ins. And so they were actually sort of this two-man conspiracy team that was working and sort of trying to figure out how they could introduce more interaction in the team using check-ins and other mechanisms. And so when you walked in 3 months later and watched that team in their daily stand-up, they were asking each other about their kids and giving each other grief and talking about the silly things they did over the weekend, and it all looked very fluid and very natural. But I can assure you, knowing the people involved, it was not. It was the kind of thing where these folks were thinking very explicitly, how can I make this happen?
Thank you.
So the 3-second share day is an intriguing idea. I hadn't seen this before. And it's when you want to help team members in different offices get to know one another. And basically what you would do, and given some of the technology we're all using at home today, this might be particularly easy to do, is you designate a share day when everyone on the team will share scenes from their day, and then you capture 3-second vignettes hour by hour throughout the day. So each hour, you're going to capture 3 seconds and maybe a little bit of a description of where they are and what they're doing. And then at the end of the day, you're going to stitch all of those vignettes together into a story. You could do that just by taking notes, or you could use video recording to record throughout the day and then just stitch all of those videos together. The idea here is then to share that out with the broader group. So we share out with other teams a set of vignettes of what we as a team did during the day.
Are you thinking of that as being I don't know, a lever toward celebration?
Could be celebration or simply recognition
Uh-huh.
of who we are and what we do. For instance, there was a team I worked with at Solutions IQ that got up every day periodically and played hacky sack. Okay. This was after hacky sack was cool, by the way, long after hacky sack was cool. And these guys would get up and play hacky sack for 5 minutes every couple of hours. And it was a thing that made them unique. It was something they did together. Taking a video snapshot of that would have been a way of capturing the very unique character of that group and then sharing that with others, and people would know right away who that was. Another is to do, and this is more of an individual thing, is to share citizenship stories. And this is sharing stuff that, particularly of social impact, that remind the group of their shared values and responsibility. And I saw this most recently at REI, someplace that really had that sense of social purpose and social value. And the idea here is that people who are working with this wider community, doing volunteer work, pro bono work, or other public service work, get to speak to the group about the project they're working on. And so this brings in that broader purpose and shares people's passions and interests with the group. And this last one, I think
I
is,
just wanted to say
yeah,
I missed that about the REI culture, and I'm wearing
yeah,
my REI steward shirt today, coincidentally.
yeah,
But that coming to, I don't know if I quite understood what you're sharing there was, but they had a culture that embraced getting out and doing um, things together out, to help build a trail or clean up litter or whatever.
yes,
Um, and and then they would sometimes come back and say, this group of people went such and such and built a trail, last week, and it really helped kind of raise awareness of what people were doing. And I think it just really kind of, it elevated the quality of their culture, I think, because it showed
yes.
that being a citizen of the community and a citizen of the world and a citizen even within the company was normal. And
Uh-huh.
I felt really comfortable to say, next Friday I'm going to be doing a volunteer thing, and everybody went, oh great.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, well, wait a minute, don't you have work to do? It was
Mm-hmm.
part of their culture that there were things that went beyond the usual work, that was a habit, a ritual.
Yeah, I did a pro bono engagement with some hairdressers a couple of weeks ago, and I was in there to talk about different business ideas with them, and I was surprised to find that what they wanted to talk to me about was how they could incorporate more community activities into their salon. So how could they connect their salon with the community at large through charitable work and through other kinds of pro bono engagements with the community at large? Blew me away. I was not really attuned to how important that might be to them. And the REI example is another good example. And I think that in terms of bringing that sense of value to a group, Rob, I think when I think about Five Whys and that coaching collaborative that we have, one of the things that might be interesting to add to that is some sort of community work. What if I came in this week and shared with the group the charitable activity that I did? That sort of thing might be very powerful in terms of bringing a sense of values to a business or a group like that. So I think it
Absolutely.
has some real potential that I've not tapped into. This one I added here because I don't know that it's necessarily unique to distributed groups or virtual groups. So I want to admit that up front. But I have seen all too frequently in modern organizations, and by modern, I mean in any company that I've worked for the past 10 years, um, the practice seems to have become one of when somebody gets laid off, that nobody acknowledges it, and I'm not sure why that is, but it has become very commonplace to almost deny and not say anything about it.
Yeah,
And I
that's cultural
find
poison.
what's that?
That's cultural poison, I think. And I
Yeah,
would blame HR, le-
yes,
legal departments, and just chicken shit leadership for making it the policy that we don't ever discuss when somebody leaves for any reason other than they're spending more time with family or some bullshit like that.
yeah, yeah,
Like
Yeah,
that
no,
really leaves a hole that takes a while to heal. And I've I've worked at companies where they really tried to just gag everybody for that to such a degree that it was just like this culture is dead.
yeah,
It's not
yeah,
an
yeah,
actual
not
living creature anymore.
yeah,
not to mention when they don't even let the person say goodbye,
right,
right?
right,
I mean,
Which
that's
REI did to me, by the way,
yeah, yeah,
right. I
which
mean,
was really,
it's
really weird.
it doesn't feel like it's congruent with some other stuff.
yeah,
The other side is when somebody leaves, when you go away from someplace, no matter how much good you did, oftentimes you become the excuse for everything that went wrong,
yeah.
right?
So this ritual, I think, is an important one, and I think it's one we shouldn't lose. And you could have variations on this, but the idea is that when somebody gets fired or laid off from a team or leaves for any reason, the team gets together and writes down everything that you won't miss about them, and we put that in a box. So we put that on a slip of paper, on a post-it note or something. We put it in a box and we seal the box. And then the team writes down everything that you will miss about them. And we're going to put that up on a board. So we're going to put that on a sticky note. We're going to stick that on a whiteboard. And then everyone claims one of those things on the whiteboard that they will now do so that the things that we loved about the person are not lost in some sense. And then we take the box and we burn it.
Um, I like this idea overall, but what if that person was so uniquely talented that nobody can pick it up? You have to. Is there another bullet point which is hire the person back for any uninvited?
It could be. Whoops. Well, and this is for any leaving, so I don't think it's necessarily for firing. This could be somebody's just left because they found an opportunity someplace else, right?
I understand. I'm
Yeah,
just having
yeah,
fun with it.
yeah. And for any of these rituals, I think there is lots of room for creativity here. So, yeah, we should modify this. And if there are pieces that we don't like, for instance, you might get in trouble if you're setting fires in the middle of the office place. You know, maybe that part won't fly. So maybe you take the things that you won't miss and you run them through the shredder or something like that. There's plenty of room for your own creativity. And maybe
It,
that's a good segue.
yeah, it kind of almost feels like a start, stop, continue or something,
Yeah,
in a certain sense.
yeah, it
Think
is.
about the things like when you say we won't miss this about the person being gone,
Uh-huh.
sealing that and never looking at it, I'm not sure. I mean, sometimes we might want to have empathy around, possibly what was motivating the person to do something we won't miss,
Yeah.
but also be conscious about, what we can even do better. Like let's possibly
Hmm.
consciously take that as a positive that we learned what not to do.
Hmm.
I I take that as a action of respect about the person, not to trash them behind their back, and to not let them be the convenient scapegoat for
Yes.
all the organization's problems, but instead uh, try to
A-
just look at the positives and figure out how to
Acknowledge it. acknowledge
continue
it and
it.
move on. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. So again, Art, you definitely, I think you can take this and modify it. And maybe there are things that you could do with this. I don't know. So I think it's legit to explore that. And along those lines, create our own rituals. And so this 7-step process is something that I took from the Rituals at Work book. And so this was basically decide why you want to create a ritual, find some sort of trigger, a specific time, maybe people or place that's going to be your trigger for that ritual. Come up with the elements of the ritual. What are the pieces of the ritual that are important to have? Do you need some sort of symbolism, a prop, or an act? And then put the pieces together into an arc from trigger through to completion, and work out how people will perform the ritual. Um, and then codify it. How can we make this into a thing that has an effect within the organization, which is repeating the ritual? This may or may not be the way you create rituals. I think some of these elements are critical and others might be optional, but it's an interesting idea. And as I've suggested, I think rituals are an important way of providing some very important benefit for groups and organizations. So I guess I want to pause for a minute here and ask, what are some other rituals that you might use?
Tom, can I throw one thing into your list there of your 7 items is somehow making it so that everybody can contribute to creating rituals.
Yeah,
Like Joel's comment there about one guy saying, "Well, here's your music you're going to listen to," right? You don't
right.
want to be in a voluntold type place because then we're going to begrudgingly be doing these things.
Yeah,
One thing that I've done before is, remember in college you'd have the game of quarters, and if you
yep,
made the quarter into the cup a certain number of times, you get to make a rule, and
yeah.
then all of a sudden we're all pointing with our elbows or we're all doing something kind of silly.
Hmm.
And it's what's neat about that is it's not one person making all the rules.
Right, right. I agree with that 100%. I do think it is a collaborative effort. If it's the manager imposing a ritual, it's probably not going to be very successful.
One of the rituals that we had I worked at a Microsoft game studio that made the Forza Motorsport car racing game.
Hmm.
And the way that group formed was, at first it was acknowledged that the people who used to make racing games there didn't really understand cars or racing very much, and I was hired in as like a subject matter expert about those things. But it was really hard to work with the raw ingredients that we had to sort of stand up this um, group of people who could compete with a video game like Gran Turismo.
Yeah.
Um, and so when they formed the Turn 10 studios later, they wanted to make sure the people who were coming into that group actually did like cars and racing. And so a ritual that they came up with was, when new people joined the group, it's, introduce yourself and tell us, what do you drive? And
Ah,
so
okay.
I got the intention, but as the group got bigger and there were people who were like artists who built landscapes for racetracks or something, the people who could do good quality trees and hills and meadows and stuff like that, they don't need to necessarily drive anything, or care about cars that much. And so after a while, it became this kind of you're on the spot to look like you're cool enough to work here. And for initially, it worked well to make sure that we were stocking the ranks with people who did actually love that sort of thing. But after a while, it started to feel kind of I don't know, icky, like you're putting people on the spot to justify your existence. And so I think it would have been healthy for them to tweak that and make it more, figure out when it served its purpose and kill it off or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a
That,
good point.
that's a cool thing. It's almost like maybe there should be a rule. I'm not sure if rule is too strong, but that only keep a ritual as long as it's useful
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something. And it might be that its use actually changes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, its use might be over a long time. It might not be that now we're getting everyone to talk, but the use might be that, boy, this makes us really feel bonded or something, you know, because it's been around so long. But if it's not any good anymore, let's get rid of it,
Yeah.
almost from a lean point of view.
REI's culture was had its not motorsports version, but it was are you really a hardcore outdoor enthusiast?
Yeah.
You know, and if you work in IT and you administer servers or something like that, maybe you're not an outdoor person at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so to come in there was some kind of feeling of pressure that you better be able to, you know, appear like you're a Gore-Tex wearing outdoor, you know, person who wears wool socks and sandals or something, or else you don't fit in there. And again, being conscious about what are our goals of the ritual, and is it still serving us?
Yeah. Yeah. Important
Would
questions to keep in mind for sure.
Would you tie the rituals at all into a concept like shuhari,
Mm,
or is that possible to think about it like that? That
I
sometimes
haven't. It's an interesting idea, Art. I just that's that's interesting.
right?
Yeah.
I guess I'm just thinking that once something becomes part of our DNA, we may not need to go through the ritual anymore because we're actually understanding how to get to the
Well,
purpose.
you know, if shuhari, if shu is where I'm following the rules, and ha is where I am starting to occasionally break the rules and do things differently, and occasionally admit to exceptions. And if re is where I've become an expert and I am creating new routines and new ways of doing things, then in shu, I am going through and accepting whatever rituals without changing those rituals. In ha, I am starting to admit to exceptions to rituals, which would be back to Joel's ideas about maybe rituals becoming stale or needing to be changed or go away. And then if I'm really talented, if I'm at re, then I'm creating my own rituals. How about that?
That works for me.
Yeah, yeah, possibly. All right.
Yeah. Well, thank God, because I just made it up. All
Yeah,
right.
or it could be that when we get to a re, we don't really need to have any conscious rituals because we're
Right.
actually following stuff unconsciously at
They're
that point.
internalized. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a ritual to share.
Just
What's
all
that?
right.
When I worked at Cumulo, uh, Michaela shared a technique that she called feedback speed dating. And um, the this have you anybody heard of this?
No.
So one thing you may have seen in your work is that a lot of times people on a team, especially a new team, don't know how to talk to each other, and especially don't know how to give feedback, especially critical feedback. They
Yeah.
just suck it up and put their headphones on or whatever it is, and don't bring it up. Feedback speed dating, you set up about a half hour a week or a half hour every couple of weeks, where people pair up and give and receive about 5 minutes of feedback with each other, and then rotate. And
Ah,
given how big your team is or whatever, and how often you do it, the idea is that everybody is giving and receiving feedback to one another about once a month. And I found when I brought that practice to Chimeta, they didn't like the word speed dating.
mhm.
So we called it quick feedback.
Yeah.
And we outgrew the ritual when the team did it for about 2 months or 3 months. And then the team got natural at just giving and receiving feedback the normal way. but to have the structure of having, I know that every, if I could take a Post-it note of the things that Art's doing that bug me, next time we talk, I can say, hey, Art, man, you got to cut your hair. It's killing me. Or
Hey, at least I have hair.
and he could say, yeah, Joel, you should start growing hair or something. But knowing that you have a time and place where you will be giving feedback and practicing that, and receiving feedback and practicing how to do so, it helped build the skill of the team in doing that. And then the feedback itself helped the team evolve. But pretty soon it got to the point where we're like, we're doing it all the time now. Do we really need to keep doing this specific thing? And in our case, we did actually put it down and just do the organic version of it, and it did stick until the team disbanded. But boy, would I recommend that technique.
Okay.
Again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joel.
You're welcome.
Well, guys, that about wraps things up.
Tom, would you consider something like, sometimes things are like, is this a protocol or a ritual? There's one called ouch, oops. You heard of that one before?
I don't think so.
So let's say that you're in a meeting and somebody says something that kind of cuts you wrong, right? Now they're not, if we all agree from a prime directive point of view that we're not trying to hurt each other, right? But let's let each other know when we get kind of stabbed a little bit, right? So you might say ouch if somebody says something. The person who might have said the thing that was maybe perceived inflammatory or something, they'll say oops. And it's kind of, you could think about that's kind of a ritual. That's kind of more of a protocol possibly. I'm not sure. But would you, are you thinking about rituals being things that kind of happen at prescribed times?
Rituals
or are they
typically
more like
have a strong element of meaning to them. And so a protocol doesn't necessarily have strong meaning. Okay. So it's a set of steps you go through that may or may not have a lot of meaning associated with them. And so if it has lots of meaning, then I would put it firmly in the ritual category. And if it doesn't seem to have much intrinsic meaning associated with it, but it's a thing that we agree we all have to do, that might be more of a protocol.
How would you describe what the feedback that I just explained? That feels like straddling both to me.
Yep. And I would be reluctant to try and nail that one down. So I think I'm gonna fall back and say, well, there's a fuzzy boundary there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can roll with that.
Yeah. So anyway, I am going to give a ringing endorsement for the Rituals at Work book. I love it. I think it's great. It's got a lot of rituals around change management, for example, which I think that folks in our particular discipline could really use. So there's a lot more rituals in that book than the ones I've shared. And I think there are a lot of rituals that we could all get a lot of benefit from. And the Daily Rituals book is just a wonderful book. It's a great catalog of the quirks and peccadillos of individuals and their rituals and routines, which provide some really interesting insight into how some very unique people have used rituals to enhance their lives.
I'm going to write peccadillos on my keyword bingo here. Thank you, Tom.
Anytime, man.
I've been waiting years to fill that one out.
Awesome. Hey, I have a question. Is it possible that when I'm going to go by and read these books, is anybody interested in doing any kind of like a little book club thing on them? Or possibly that's kind of what Tom's doing here a bit by pulling things out. But I'm sure that after I read it, it might be discussion or something.
That could be fun. I'd be up for that.
Sure.
Just checking.
Yeah, absolutely. So check out the website, Thomas L. Perry, or Thomas Perry LLC. I've been changing things up a little bit and focusing a bit more on innovation. And that's because I think one of the things I know how to do is to help people discover the ideas that make their company grow in ways that best reflect who they are and what they do. And so This has become more of an emphasis for me. Still do all the training and coaching that I've always done, but I'm much more interested in helping companies at this point pull out of a lot of this recession that many of them are in. And that can apply to companies, large and small, and it can also apply to individuals. And so I want to help people get things started again and adapt to the new normal. Uh, and if you're looking for this content, you can find it on my YouTube channel as well as my blog, which has hundreds of articles in it. Whoops, I'm bouncing around. So let's build something great together. That's what I'm here to do. That's what gets me excited, and that's what I'd like to do with you. So thank you very much, guys.